Welcome back. And so as we begin this morning, we'll be reflecting on issues relating to the health sector. By my count, if perhaps the federal government, all right, we'll be heading to other matters before we get to the health sector, and that will be the state of the nation as we look ahead into the general elections. INEC has published a list of candidates, and we find that, Mr. President's name, of course, is there for the APC. The NDC is also there, with the presidential candidate being Mr. Peter Obi, former presidential candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 elections. Of course, there are other candidates on the list, but there is also the big issue as INEC rejects the manual submission of the candidacy of former President Goodluck Jonathan, representing a group of the PDP. We'll be reflecting on all these issues as we have joining us Professor Oke Ikechukwu, is Executive Director, Mr. Development Specs Academy. Mr. Okechukwu will be joining us later on the program. And joining us now is Mr. Magnus Onyibe, who joins us virtually. Mr. Onyibe, good morning and welcome to the program. All right, Mr. Onyibe joins us right here in our Lagos studio. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So as I've laid the background, I wonder what you're making of the rejection of the former President Goodluck Jonathan's name as a candidate representing a group of the PDP, and what it means as we head into the general elections, particularly for the opposition.
First of all, good morning, Nigerians. As you know, the INEC chairman, Hamilton, is a professional. He's a thoroughbred, so he's following the rules the way it should be, and he's not making any exceptions. You know that he has also already laid the ground rules that the military shouldn't be in charge of security during elections, and that he wants the police to be, because that's what the Constitution says. He's a professor of law, and he knows what the law says, so he's absolutely going to follow the rules. And so I'm not surprised that he's insisting that what needs to be done needs to be done.
Let's talk about security beyond election. Let's talk about security, which is a big focus for you, and which is the primary responsibility of government. Section 14(2) it talks about first. So that's why we hold government to account all the time, that no matter what you do, no matter where you do, if people are not alive and well, you are failed. It's as simple as that. That's why they say the buck stops on the table. But the president has made a couple of moves. Recently, we've seen some progress in terms of rescue. We've seen, although there's a lot more people been in captivity, we've seen convictions. In fact, the DSS the other day had actually tried to appeal a conviction because they wanted a capital punishment. And then we've also seen the president expand divisions from 8 to 14, to 12 now, which is an additional 4. So I want to piggyback from what happened between the Catholic bishops and the president on that particular question. They presented a situation of in the words of Cardinal Michael, a bleeding country. But he pushed back to say, I recognize there's a challenge, but I'm doing something about it. Is he doing enough?
It's never enough. It's a work in progress. You just listed the progress that he has made, which is quite commendable. He has partnered with the Americans to do what they had done. The American president has sent him a commendation letter, which is like counter to the country of particular concern that we have been enduring. And you listed all the things DSS have done, what they did in Urire, all that and all that. So significant progress has been made, but of course, the last kick of the dying horse, the protagonists, the insurgents are still kicking. They are still trying to prove that they are still here, and so they're still doing the kidnapping that they're doing, the killings that they're doing. It has elicited a reaction from the US, complaining that 30 people were killed around Kaduna, and stuff like that, but there's no denying the fact, as you just stated very clearly, that the president is doing something. Rome was not built in a day. He has to take structure, for things to evolve. So he's putting the structure, on ground, and is responding better than he was previously. Right now, bandits are being arrested, terrorists are going to jail, from court. In fact, the really people have been sentenced to death, in a very short
Sentenced to life imprisonment.
Life imprisonment.
yeah, okay, sorry, life imprisonment in a very short span of time, and they have used an unconventional method, which is actually only applicable in the south, as I can say, by going to arrest the family members of the kidnappers, because they could be identified and say, look, you kill our people, we'll kill your people, and the people capitulated, and stuff like that. That can be done very much in the north, because the bandits are actually in the forest. They reside in the forest. They don't have addresses that you can go and you know their family and their wives and their mothers and stuff like that. They did with these people. So, but you can see a change of tact, a change of strategy, and that things are beginning to manifest in the ways that people can see that government is not nonchalant. They are being responsive, so that would even probably help the president or help Nigeria in being removed from the CPC sanction, because the rest of the world, the US, is seeing now that something is being done. People are going to jail, people are being arrested, so some things are being done. But it's not unexpected that there still be, kick up the dying horse, like I said, these people trying to prove that they are still, up and about. But maybe eventually, because of the series of things that the president is putting in place, like the state policing, for instance, that he's putting in place, it's taking some time, but that's the right thing to do. We're going through the processes. I wrote a book on it, The Imperative of State Policing in Nigeria. I've been on it since 1999, that there should be state police, because that's really the real thing. And I've also been an advocate of the fact that there should be local policing apart from state police, community policing, with the monarchs involved in it, because they are the repository of information. They are the ones, if you have even spousal quarrels and whatever, is the kings that they go to. If you have communal clash with villages, land and stuff like that, the kings that they go to. So they have all the information. And you know that pre-1966, when the monarchs, the traditional council was the third tier of government, that they had native police. So they were the first responders. They were the people who dealt with this crisis on the ground level before it would escalate. So, but right now they are exposed. If the emir or king of a particular place mentions to DSS or the people in charge of security that they know of something and whatever, because they are exposed, those people will come and take reprisal action on them. They'll probably, behead them, murder them or whatever, because they don't have police. But if they have native police, they'll be able to counter-attack these people before they can even get to the levels that they're getting to. So I was very, very happy that when the Olubadan of Ibadan, Oba Ladoja, visited the president with his chiefs and other kings, that the president actually pointed out to them that they're going to have a traditional role to play, critical role to play in the decentralization of policing, which is actually, why actually Nigeria was saying pre-1966 coup.
And traditional rulers are leading the charge, in the advocacy for a constitutional rule in the execution of the state policing bill as it now becomes closer to becoming a law. But don't you see a marked difference, before we get to the debate on the state police bill, don't you see a marked difference in the approach to security under this administration, unlike the last administration, not just in response to tackling the challenge through deterrence or arrest of criminals, but also in trial and prosecution? Prior to this time, we've also seen the Attorney General of the Federation leading the mass trial of terrorism suspects, and seeing to their conviction. And so, what are the underlying factors that you believe to be defining that marked difference between the between the approach of this administration and the immediate last administration, especially that they are the same in the same ruling party?
I am very, very happy that you pointed this out. There's a completely marked difference, both in the pursuit of stabilizing the economy and in security. You know, whatever anybody wants to say about President Tinubu, he's a very structured person. You know, he's taking these things one by one. He first of all dealt with the economy because that's the fundamental, and he did whatever he did, and people are reeling in pain and stuff like that. He says he recognizes it, but we know the people on the street, you know, unfortunately are feeling the pain, and they may not understand that the fundamentals have been gotten right. The fundamentals of Nigerian economy is better than it was a long time ago. The same thing with security. Security previously, they just bought high-loss, put some soldiers on it, carried the AK-47, and they just went. And these bandits, these criminals, these insurgents have become very sophisticated. They plant IUD. They give us false call, and the people run to the scene, and their trucks are exploded, and they die, and that's it. But this time it's structured. The president came out and said, we need state policing. We have been talking about this thing since 1999, since when President Obasanjo was in power. We stated, I have been writing articles back from that day, it's in my book, that we need to decentralize policing because we need the community involved. And right now, he recognized it. This idea has been pushed right from 1999, from Obasanjo's time to others. Nobody dared to do something about it. But he has come out to say, look, we actually need state policing. And he impressed it upon the National Assembly, upon the governors, and there's a consensus that there's state police. If you remember, prior to this time, the argument was that some states don't have enough funds to fund state police because they are indigent. They are not able to even pay salaries. But with the removal of subsidy on petroleum products, a lot of money, trillions, are going to the states right now. So they cannot complain that they don't have enough money to pay police because they are able to pay the civil servants right now based on that. But a lot of people are not saying that. So now most of them can afford state police, and we know that because these things are local, the local people have to be involved in managing this thing. And so the president, Tinubu, has been more structured than all the other leaders. Right now, it's not just buying high-lows and putting police on the vehicles and they are blowing them up. And
just don't lose your track of your thoughts on this particular one. But I was at a forum. I hosted a dialogue session, and I had the privilege of having the two CDSs, Matimota Agwai and Lucky Rabo, yes, in that particular play. And I listened attentively to these generals who have been at the forefront. Now, I looked at the data. Now, because the issue of funding is also part of the conversation.
Absolutely.
From about 1 trillion in 2016, because I did a 10-year analytics, from about 1 trillion in 2016 rather, to this last budget about 5.4 trillion. Mm-hmm. So if you do the summation, we're talking about almost 30 trillion in terms of the monies being earmarked, let me use the word carefully, earmarked as a spending limit for defense and security, which came to about maybe $21 billion if you use it, the current exchange rate. Now, the question is, how much of these monies are actually released? Because I heard the general say, when you say, why is it security everywhere? And you come to meet him as in when he was CDS and say, but they're giving you all this money. He said, go and tell them, go and ask them, where did they give the money? This is a former general speaking. So let's talk about earmarks, releases, and proper spending. Because we miss that part of the conversation. When we hear this big money, it's always the highest in the budget. This monies are not released as they should be released, and we have expectation. How do we manage that? Because if we could fail in that, it's going to affect state police efficiency as well.
I completely agree with you. As a matter of fact, General Louis Rabo is going to be on the panel in my book presentation on September 10, and that's absolutely true. Most of these budgets are not cash backed. We know it's not just military. As a matter of fact, you would even be impressed that I also did the analysis and found out that 2005 and 2007, the budget has been increased from about 5.9% of the budget to 7 point something percent of the budget in 2026. So Tinubu is actually increasing the budget for it. But whether this budget is cash backed is a different matter altogether, which we all know most of the budgetary provisions are not cash backed because of paucity of funds and the situation of the economy. So that's the issue. But whether it's being addressed and whether more money is being put in the budget, it's clear that more money is being put. I did the analysis myself. I will just give you a clear instance. In the United States of America, this budget, 2026, is about $7 trillion. They are spending $1.1 trillion on defense. And that is about 14% of the budget. Nigeria is spending about 7%. Last year they spent 5.9, so about 1% difference, right? So we're going incrementally. Of course, you and I know why the US is spending so much money. The US has 750 military bases across the country, across the world. They have about 840 in the United States of America alone. Of course, you know how Iran is lobbing bombs and drones into US bases, right? Now, one of the good things that you didn't mention that President Tinubu has done is that apart from increasing the divisions from 8 to 12, they are also now creating forward operation bases, which means military bases are going beyond the divisions. They're getting closer to the theaters of war. They get exposed to attacks by these bandits like they did recently when they ransacked some bases and stuff like that. But I think the military people should learn to fortify further. But it makes intervention closer to resources. If you remember, there are places where bandits have attacked and they said for so many hours they are waiting for the military to come and they didn't show up. But when the bases are closer to them now, the response time will be quite closer.
So let's get something clear, sir. Are you saying that there is more allocation to defense budget?
Absolutely.
Or there is more release? Because that's what the basis of my colleague's question.
Yes.
Because if
there's more allocation, but
not necessarily not more release, because the 2025 report says only 7% of budgetary spending was released to security.
Absolutely, that's what I said. That they are not cash bashed. We have a lot of budgets, but they are not cash bashed. Maybe because of paucity of funds or whatever, or prioritization of where the funds go to.
And that's what the problem is.
So maybe the president, so also look, I'm telling people, somebody read my article and complained and said, oh, the president didn't do this, This is a democracy. It's evolving. We should have, beyond statistics, beyond the budgeted, beyond the setup, we should have more organizations in the civil society space, emphasizing how to bring responsive governance. We should have a clearly different civil society organization dealing with the budget.
Budget is
correcting these things that we're talking about. That's what they do in America. They are societies, organizations for budget is just one. There has to be money. There has to be pressure. If there's no pressure,
but Mr. Onyibe, governments are also elected based on the competency that they claim to have, and so when there are issues there, we'll ask questions and not necessarily wait for civil society to also mount pressure. Of course, and they're doing that. But the question is, where are the results? But we must anchor at this point.
Yeah, that's idealism. If you remember, even in the United States of America, it is the press, the media, that actually caused what made one president to resign. The Watergate is the press. It's not whatever. So we have a responsibility. Yes,
we wonder if that will be
a lot of pressure. Civil society has to come out. No, you're doing that. We're all doing that. But there has to be more pressure, because the point I'm trying to make is that in a democracy, don't expect everything to be perfect. That's idealism. There has to be pressure to make the people wake up and live up to expectations.
But we have to get close to perfection as much as possible as well. We must thank you very much for coming on the program. Sir Magnus Onyibe is a public affairs analyst. Thank you for your time and your insights.
Thank you.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time to also reflect on the state of nation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.